The auditorium fell silent as Professor Zixthor adjusted his translucent blue skin under the harsh academic lighting. His 4 eyes scanned the crowd of eager alien students, each representing a different species from across the galaxy. Today's lecture would make his career, or destroy it completely. Students of the Galactic Academy, Zixthor began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent decades studying a mystery. Today we discuss the most fascinating extinct species in known space, the legendary humans of Earth. A ripple of excitement passed through the audience. In the front row, Kelta, a young Rigelian with silver scales, leaned forward eagerly. Her species had always been fascinated by warrior cultures, and human folklore promised tales of incredible violence and bravery. Behind her, Jorix the Crystalline being chimed softly, his way of showing interest. His translucent form caught the light beautifully as he prepared to record everything for his research project on primitive species. These creatures, Zixthor continued, activating his holographic display, vanished from their homeworld approximately 300 Earth years ago, but the legends they left behind. He paused dramatically. The legends suggest they were the most terrifying species ever to evolve. A 3-dimensional image of a human appeared above the stage, tall, bipedal, with strangely flat features and tiny eyes. The alien students murmured among themselves. It looked so ordinary. Do not be fooled by their simple appearance, Zixthor warned, clearly enjoying the attention. According to the folklore recovered from their ruins, humans possessed supernatural abilities that defy all known science. He gestured, and the hologram changed to show a human lifting what appeared to be massive stone blocks. They called it adrenaline strength. Reportedly, in times of crisis, humans could lift objects weighing several times their own body mass. Our xenobiologists have studied the supposed chemical compound, but such a biological system should be impossible. Kelta's scales shimmered with excitement. Professor, how strong were they exactly? The folklore claims, Zixthor said, consulting his notes, that a human mother once lifted a ground vehicle to save her offspring. The vehicle weighed approximately 2,000 kilograms. Gasps echoed through the auditorium. Even the strongest Rigelian could barely manage half that weight. But that's not the most disturbing part, the professor continued. Humans apparently felt no pain when sufficiently motivated. Their legends speak of warriors continuing to fight with severed limbs, of individuals walking great distances with broken bones, of mothers giving birth in combat zones and immediately returning to battle. The image changed again, showing crude drawings apparently made by humans themselves, stick figures engaged in various acts of what could only be described as impossible endurance. They also possessed something called pack bonding, Zixthor explained. This was their most dangerous trait. Humans would form irrational emotional attachments to almost anything. Other humans, animals, even inanimate objects. When these bonds were threatened, humans became capable of incredible violence. A new hologram appeared, a human figure standing protectively over a small 4-legged creature. This image, recovered from their ruins, shows a human defending what they called a dog. According to their records, humans would risk their lives for these animals. They would share food during famines, carry injured dogs for great distances, and even attack predators many times their size to protect them. But Professor, interrupted Vex, a methodical centaurian, surely this is exaggerated. No rational species would endanger themselves for non-related organisms. Zixthor's 4 eyes gleamed. Ah, but humans weren't rational, my dear Vex. That was precisely what made them so dangerous. They packed bonded with their tools, their vehicles, their homes, their ideas. Humans would die defending abstractions like honor or freedom, concepts that exist only in their minds. The hologram shifted to show what appeared to be a massive explosion. This, students, is perhaps the most terrifying example. When faced with invasion from their own kind, humans would destroy their own cities rather than surrender them. They called it scorched earth tactics. They would literally burn their homes, poison their water supplies, and demolish their infrastructure to deny it to enemies. The alien students sat in stunned silence. The concept was almost incomprehensible. Their warfare was particularly brutal, Zixthor continued, clearly warming to his subject. They developed weapons capable of destroying their entire planet, and nearly used them on themselves multiple times. Only their extinction prevented what they called mutually assured destruction. Suddenly, a new voice cut through the lecture hall, a voice that didn't belong to any known species in the Academy database. Actually, Professor, we prefer the term nuclear deterrent. Every head in the auditorium turned toward the back of the hall. Standing in the entrance were three figures that made the alien students' breathing organs seize up in terror. They were exactly as tall as the holograms suggested. Their skin was a disturbing pinkish-brown color, and they had only 2 eyes each. Tiny predatory orbs that seemed to track movement with unsettling precision. One of them was smaller than the others, and had long fur growing from its head. Another was massive, with dark skin and muscles that strained against its simple clothing. The third was medium-sized, with pale skin and strange rectangular objects covering its eyes. But most terrifying of all, they were smiling. Professor Zixthor's 4 eyes went wide with horror. His blue skin faded to a sickly, pale color. "Impossible," he whispered. "You're extinct. You've been extinct for 300 years. The largest human stepped forward. Its voice was deep and rumbling, like the sound of distant thunder. "Extinct? Nah, we just went exploring. Found out we weren't alone in the universe. Figured we should probably learn the neighborhood before introducing ourselves." The smaller human with the head fur laughed, a sound that made several students instinctively flee toward the exits. "Though we have to say, Professor, your research is interesting. Where exactly did you get your information about us?" Zixthor's hands trembled as he consulted his datapad. From the ruins of your civilization, archaeological evidence, fossil records, cultural artifacts." The human with the rectangular eye covering stepped forward. "Archaeological evidence? From 300 years ago?" It made a strange expression that somehow made its mouth bigger, revealing rows of white bone-like structures that were clearly meant for tearing flesh. "Professor, 300 years ago we were barely getting off our own planet. What you found were probably the remains of our early space programs." "Early space programs?" Zixthor repeated weakly. "Yeah," the large human said casually. "We've been running around the galaxy for the last 2 centuries. We've got colonies on about 40 worlds now. We just, figured we should keep a low profile until we understood the galactic political situation." The auditorium was now in complete chaos. Students were frantically trying to reach the exits, but their legs seemed to have stopped working properly. The 3 humans remained completely relaxed, as if standing in a room full of terrified aliens was perfectly normal. "Don't worry," the human with head fur said, apparently noticing the panic. "We're not here to hurt anyone. We just heard about the professor's lecture series and thought we should probably set the record straight." "Set the record straight?" Zixthor managed to gasp. "Well, yeah," the large human said. "Some of your information is pretty accurate, but you're missing a lot of context. Mind if we sit in on the rest of the class?" And with that question hanging in the air like a weapon waiting to drop, the 3 humans calmly walked down the aisle toward the front row, leaving a room full of aliens to wonder if their nightmares were about to become reality, or if something even stranger was about to unfold. Chapter 2. When legends become lecturers, the silence in the auditorium was so complete that the only sound was the soft, crystalline chiming of Jorix's nervous vibrations. Professor Zixthor stood frozen at his podium, his 4 eyes fixed on the 3 impossible figures now settling into seats in the front row. The human with head fur crossed her legs and smiled encouragingly at the professor. "Please, don't let us interrupt. We're really curious about what you've discovered about our species." Zixthor's blue skin had now turned an alarming shade of purple. But you're supposed to be extinct. The evidence clearly shows." "Evidence can be tricky," the human with the rectangular eye coverings interrupted gently. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen, by the way, xenoarchaeologist. This is Marcus Williams, our security specialist, and Lieutenant Commander Jessica Rodriguez from our diplomatic corps." "Diplomatic corps?" Vex the Centaurian managed to whisper from somewhere in the middle rows. Jessica Rodriguez, the one with the head fur, turned to address the room. We represent the Human Colonial Alliance. We've been observing galactic civilization for about 50 years now, trying to figure out the best way to make contact. Observing? Kelta squeaked, her silver scales now a dull gray with fear. Marcus Williams, the large human, chuckled, a sound that made several students dive under their desks. We're really good at not being noticed when we don't want to be. Turns out when you're studying alien civilizations, it helps to watch from a distance first. Dr. Chen adjusted her rectangular eye coverings. We call them glasses, she said, apparently noticing the students staring. They help us see better. Humans have pretty bad natural vision compared to most species. Bad vision? Professor Zixthor found his voice again. But the legends speak of humans with supernatural awareness, capable of tracking prey across vast distances. Oh, we can do that, Marcus said casually. We just use different methods. Want me to demonstrate? Before anyone could answer, Marcus stood up and looked around the room. Let's see. Jorix, you're a crystalline, probably from the Andromeda sector based on your refractive patterns. You've been recording this lecture for a research project. You're nervous. Your harmonic frequency is about 12% higher than normal for your species. Jorix's chiming stopped entirely. Marcus continued. Kelta, you're Rigelian, warrior caste, judging by your scale patterns. You came to this lecture because you were hoping to hear about human combat techniques. You're scared right now, but also fascinated. He turned to Vex. Vex, you're trying to calculate the probability that we're actually hallucinations caused by exposure to exotic gases from the chemistry lab next door. It's not gases, by the way. The room was dead silent. How? Vex whispered. Dr. Chen smiled. Pattern recognition, body language analysis, scent detection. Humans are persistence hunters. We evolved to track things over long periods of time. We notice details. Details like, Jessica added. The fact that 3 of you have your hands on personal communicators right now, probably trying to alert campus security. 2 of you are calculating distances to the exits, and at least 1 of you is wondering if we can actually read minds. Can you? A small voice asked from the back. Nope, Marcus laughed. We're just really good at guessing. It's called empathy. We try to understand what others are thinking and feeling. Professor Zixthor slowly sank into his chair. The folklore, the incredible strength, the inability to feel pain, the pack bonding. Was any of it true? Oh, absolutely, Jessica said. But there's context you're missing. Dr. Chen stood up and walked to the holographic display. May I, Professor? Zixthor nodded weakly. The adrenaline strength you mentioned is real, Dr. Chen said, manipulating the controls. The hologram changed to show a detailed biological diagram. But it's an emergency response system. We can access unusual strength when we're in danger. But it's not sustainable. We literally damage our own bodies doing it. As for not feeling pain, Marcus added, that's also an emergency response. We call it shock. When we're badly injured, our brains sometimes shut down pain signals so we can survive long enough to get help. But trust me, we feel pain just fine most of the time. Jessica gestured to the image of the human defending the dog. And pack bonding. Well, that part you got right. We do form deep emotional connections with almost everything. Including, Dr. Chen said with a slight smile, 3 alien students who are currently trying very hard not to run away in terror. Kelta's scales shimmered slightly. You can tell we're afraid? Of course, Marcus said gently. Your pupils are dilated. Your breathing is rapid, and you're all sitting on the edges of your seats ready to bolt. It's a perfectly rational response to meeting a species you thought was extinct. But here's the thing, Jessica said, leaning forward. We don't want you to be afraid. That's actually why we've been studying your cultures for so long. We wanted to understand how to make contact without causing panic. Apparently, Dr. Chen said dryly, we should have started with correcting your textbooks. Vex slowly raised one appendage. Are you going to hurt us? The three humans exchanged glances. "Vex," Jessica said softly. "What would be the point? You're students. You're here to learn. We're teachers and researchers and diplomats. Why would we hurt people who are trying to understand the universe?" "Because," Professor Zixthor said in a shaky voice, "according to every piece of evidence we found, humans are the most dangerous predators ever to evolve." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was serious. "Professor, we are predators." "That part's true. But predators aren't evil, they're just efficient. A predator only kills what it needs to survive." "The dangerous part," Dr. Chen added, "isn't that we're predators. It's that we're predators who learn to think, to feel empathy, to build civilizations. We became capable of choosing when to hunt and when to protect." "And what we choose to protect," Jessica said, looking around the room, "might surprise you." She gestured to the hologram still showing the human and the dog. "You're right that we pack bond with almost anything. But you missed the most important part of that behavior." "What part?" Kelta whispered. Jessica smiled, a real smile this time, warm and genuine. "Once we pack bond with someone, we'll do absolutely anything to keep them safe. And Professor," she looked directly at Zixthor, "we've been listening to your lectures about us for 3 months now. We've watched you teach students about our species with genuine curiosity and respect. We've seen you correct misconceptions and encourage critical thinking." Marcus nodded. "As far as we're concerned, you're under our protection now." The words hung in the air like a promise and a threat all at once. "All of you are," Dr. Chen added, looking around the room. "Any species curious enough about the universe to study extinct aliens, smart enough to ask good questions, and brave enough to sit in a room with 3 apex predators just to learn something new?" She grinned. "You're exactly the kind of people we want to be friends with." Chapter 3. The Real Human Folklore. The tension in the room shifted like a tide changing direction. Where moments before there had been raw terror, now there was something else, a cautious, fragile curiosity. Jorix was the first to find his voice, his crystalline form chiming softly. "Friends? You want to be friends with us?" "Why wouldn't we?" Jessica asked, genuinely puzzled. "You're intelligent. You're curious about the universe. And you're not trying to conquer or destroy anything. From our perspective, you're ideal." "Neighbors." Professor Zixthor slowly stood up, his color returning to a more normal blue. "But the warfare, the weapons of mass destruction, the territorial violence. Our archaeological evidence shows—" "Professor," Dr. Chen interrupted gently, "how old do you think our species is?" "According to our data, humans achieved sentience approximately 50,000 Earth years ago." "And how much of that 50,000-year history do your archaeological samples cover?" Zixthor consulted his datapad. "Approximately 300 years," Marcus laughed. "So you're judging our entire species based on less than 1% of our existence? And specifically the period when we were just figuring out space travel?" "It would be like," Jessica added, "if we judged your entire species based on what your toddlers do in daycare." The comparison seemed to hit home. Several students exchanged glances. Kelta tentatively raised a claw. "But the nuclear weapons, the mutual destruction, surely that shows—" "That shows we learned from our mistakes," Dr. Chen said firmly. "Yes, we developed weapons that could destroy our world. Yes, we came close to using them. But we didn't. We stepped back from the brink and chose a different path." "How?" Vex asked, his analytical mind clearly struggling with the concept. Marcus leaned back in his chair, same way most species do probably. "We realized that our real enemies weren't each other. They were the problems we all faced together. Disease, natural disasters, resource scarcity, the challenge of understanding the universe. We learned to redirect our competitive instincts," Jessica explained. "Instead of fighting each other, we started competing to see who could solve problems better, who could cure more diseases, who could explore further into space, who could create more beautiful art. Dr. Chen activated the holographic display again. This time, instead of primitive human artifacts, it showed something completely different. A vast space station with multiple ships docked to it. "This is Haven Station," she said. "It's our primary research facility, about 50 light-years from here. We've got scientists from 12 different human colonies working together on projects ranging from xenobiology to theoretical physics." The image changed to show the interior of the station, humans working alongside strange-looking robots and computer interfaces. "But we're not just working alone," Jessica added. "We've been secretly collaborating with other species for decades." "Other species?" Professor Zixthor looked stunned. Marcus nodded. "The Kepler Collective has been sharing astronomical data with us for 20 years. The hive mind of Proxima Centauri helped us develop our faster-than-light communication systems. The nomadic fleets taught us sustainable resource management. But none of those species have reported contact with humans," Vex protested. "Because we asked them not to," Dr. Chen said. "We wanted to understand galactic culture before making formal first contact. We didn't want to accidentally start a war or cause a panic," Jorix chimed uncertainly. "So, all this time you've been secretly integrating into galactic civilization?" "Observing and learning," Jessica corrected. "We've had people attending universities, working in research facilities, even serving on some trade vessels. But always quietly, always carefully. The three of us," Marcus added, "are part of the first contact team. We've been waiting for the right moment to reveal ourselves officially." "And you decided that moment was during my lecture?" Professor Zixthor asked, sounding almost offended. Dr. Chen grinned. "Actually, we were planning to make contact next month at the Galactic Science Convention. But when we heard about your lecture series, we realized we had a problem." "What problem?" "You were teaching an entire generation of galactic citizens that humans were extinct monsters," Jessica explained. "If we showed up at a science convention, and everyone already believed we were legendary killing machines, the reaction might not have been diplomatic." Marcus chuckled. "Plus, we were honestly curious about what you'd figured out about us. Some of your deductions were pretty impressive." "Really?" Zixthor looked pleased despite himself. "The pack bonding analysis was spot on," Dr. Chen confirmed, "and your theories about our persistence hunting behaviors were remarkably accurate, considering you were working from limited archaeological data. Though you did miss some things," Jessica added. "Want to see what human folklore actually looks like?" Without waiting for an answer, she activated her own device, something small and metallic that projected a much more sophisticated hologram than the Academy's system. The image showed humans, but not the primitive stick figures from Zixthor's presentation. These were humans engaged in activities that seemed impossible even by the professor's standards. "This is from our actual folklore," Jessica said. "Stories we tell about ourselves." The hologram showed a human figure climbing what appeared to be a vertical cliff face in the middle of a storm. "This is from a story called The Ascent of K2. It's about humans who climb mountains for no reason other than to prove they can do it." The image changed to show humans in strange suits floating in the void of space. "This is from our early space exploration stories. Humans who volunteered to be shot into space in tiny metal boxes, not knowing if they'd ever come home." Another image. Humans in protective gear, walking directly into what appeared to be a massive fire. "Firefighters," Marcus explained. "Humans who run into burning buildings to save strangers." Kelta's scales were beginning to shimmer with fascination rather than fear. They do this willingly?" "That's the thing about human folklore," Dr. Chen said. "It's not about supernatural abilities. It's about ordinary people doing extraordinary things because they choose to." The hologram shifted again, showing a human woman holding a small human child. "This is from one of our most common stories," Jessica said softly. "A mother who works 3 jobs to put her child through school. No superpowers, no magical strength, just determination and love." Or this one, Marcus added as the image changed. The new hologram showed an elderly human man sitting beside a bed where another human lay unconscious. A story about a man who spent every day for 2 years sitting beside his wife while she was in a coma, talking to her, reading to her, hoping she'd wake up. Did she? Jorix asked quietly. In the story? Yes. Jessica smiled. In real life? Sometimes. The point isn't whether the story has a happy ending. The point is that humans will sit beside someone for years, just in case. Professor Zixthor was staring at the holograms with a completely different expression now. This is what humans consider heroic? Not conquest or dominance, but caring for others? Conquest is easy, Dr. Chen said. Any species with enough technology can conquer. But caring for someone weaker than yourself, protecting someone who can't protect themselves, sacrificing your own comfort for someone else's benefit, that takes something more than strength, Marcus finished. It takes choice. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Vex spoke up, his voice thoughtful. So when you pack bond with us, what does that mean exactly? The 3 humans exchanged glances. It means, Jessica said carefully, that if anyone ever threatens this academy, this planet, or any of you personally, they'll have to go through us first. All of us, Marcus added. The whole human colonial alliance, 40 worlds, 12 billion people, and some of the most advanced technology in the galaxy. But more importantly, Dr. Chen said, it means we'll share our knowledge with you. Our science, our art, our stories, our mistakes, everything we've learned in 50,000 years of existence. She paused, looking around the room. And we'd like to learn from you too. Your species, your cultures, your ways of understanding the universe. That's what friends do. They learn from each other. Kelta slowly raised her claw again. Professor Zixthor, could we maybe invite them to finish the lecture series? I think we've been studying the wrong human folklore. But Professor Zixthor was staring at something else entirely. A new hologram that Jessica had quietly activated. It showed the space around the academy. And there, barely visible against the stars, were 3 sleek ships that definitely hadn't been there when class started. Those are yours, aren't they? He asked quietly. Escort ships, Marcus confirmed. Standard procedure for first contact situations. How many people? About 50 per ship, Jessica said. Scientists, diplomats, cultural specialists, and yes, some security personnel. Armed? Dr. Chen nodded. Armed but not aggressive. They're here to observe and assist if needed. Professor, we told you the truth. We don't want to hurt anyone. But we also don't want anyone to hurt you while you're under our protection. Implications of that statement settled over the room like a blanket. So, Zixthor said finally, when you said we were under your protection, we meant it. All 3 humans said simultaneously. And in that moment, as the professor looked at his terrified students, at the impossible human sitting calmly in his classroom, and at the ships guarding his world from orbit, he realized that everything he thought he knew about the universe had just changed forever. The question was that a good thing or a terrifying thing? Looking at the genuine smiles on the humans' faces, he was starting to suspect it might be both. Chapter 4. The Pack Grows Larger. 3 hours later, the Academy cafeteria had become the most unusual diplomatic meeting in galactic history. Professor Zixthor sat across from Dr. Chen, watching in fascination as she consumed what she called coffee, a dark liquid that apparently contained a mild stimulant that humans were addicted to. Around them, other students had slowly begun to emerge from their hiding places, drawn by curiosity that was stronger than their fear. So let me understand this correctly, Zixthor said, consulting his notes. Humans require this coffee to function properly in the morning? Dr. Chen laughed. Not require exactly. But we strongly prefer it. It's one of our more harmless addictions. You have harmful addictions? Oh yes, Marcus said, joining them with a tray of what appeared to be food. We can become addicted to almost anything. Substances, behaviors, emotions, people. It's one of our less attractive traits. But, Jessica added, sitting down with her own tray, we've learned to manage it. We help each other overcome harmful addictions, and we channel the tendency toward beneficial ones. Beneficial addictions? Jorix asked, his crystalline form shimmering as he approached their table. He was still nervous but clearly fascinated. Like learning, Dr. Chen explained. Some humans become addicted to acquiring knowledge. They can't stop reading, researching, exploring new ideas. Or helping others, Marcus added. We call them do-gooders. They literally cannot resist helping people, even strangers. Or creating things, Jessica said. Artists, writers, inventors, who spend 18 hours a day working on their projects because they can't stop themselves. Kelta had been listening from a nearby table. Now she approached hesitantly. Could I ask you something? Of course, Jessica smiled. The pack bonding thing. Does it really work with anyone? Even people you just met? Marcus looked at her seriously. Kelta, you've been sitting in Professor Zixthor's classroom for months, learning about my species with genuine curiosity and respect. You were scared when we appeared, but you didn't run. You asked questions instead. You tried to understand. He paused. As far as I'm concerned, you're already part of the pack. Kelta's scales shimmered bright silver, apparently a sign of pleasure or excitement. But what does that mean, practically speaking? Vex asked, approaching the table with his characteristic caution. Dr. Chen pulled out her device and activated a small hologram. It means that as of 3 hours ago, this academy was added to the Human Colonial Alliance Protected Territories list. The hologram showed a star map with various systems marked in different colors. One small dot, glowing soft blue, was clearly their location. Protected territories? Professor Zixthor asked. Places we consider important, Jessica explained. Research facilities, cultural sites, homes of friends and allies. They're under our, let's call it, informal defense network. How informal? Vex asked, his analytical mind clearly working through the implications. Marcus grinned. Well, if anyone attacks this academy or threatens its students, they'll receive a polite but firm message from the Human Colonial Alliance asking them to stop. And if they don't stop? Then they'll receive a less polite message, Dr. Chen said, delivered personally. By how many humans? Kelta whispered. However many it takes, Jessica said simply. The students exchanged glances. The casual way the humans discussed overwhelming military force was somehow both terrifying and reassuring. But here's the thing, Dr. Chen continued. We really prefer the polite messages. Violence is messy, expensive. It makes everyone unhappy. We'd much rather solve problems by talking, trading, or teaching. Teaching? Jorix chimed. That's actually why we're here, Marcus explained. We want to establish formal educational exchange programs, human students studying at alien universities, alien students visiting human colonies. You'd let alien students visit human worlds? Professor Zixthor looked stunned. Why wouldn't we? Jessica asked. You're clearly intelligent, curious, and peaceful. Those are exactly the qualities we want in visitors. Dr. Chen activated her device again. The hologram showed what appeared to be a human city, but with buildings and structures that seemed designed for multiple species. This is New Geneva Colony, she explained. It's our primary xenocultural research center. We've already got visiting scholars from 6 different species living and working there. Including, Marcus added with a grin, a Kepler collective mathematician who's been helping us solve some pretty complex theoretical physics problems, and a hive mind of Proxima Centauri biotechnician who's teaching us sustainable agriculture, Jessica continued. They're not prisoners or specimens, Dr. Chen emphasized. They're colleagues, friends, teachers. They come and go as they please. Vex was clearly struggling with the implications. But security, the risk of sharing technology, the possibility of espionage. All valid concerns, Marcus agreed. But here's the thing. If someone wants to spy on us, they're going to find a way to do it regardless. Better to invite them openly, establish trust, and work together. Besides, Jessica added, What's the worst that could happen? They learn about human technology and use it to solve problems? They understand human culture and become better at peaceful coexistence? They go home and tell their people that humans aren't actually monsters? When you put it that way, Professor Zixthor said slowly, the benefits seem to outweigh the risks. Exactly, Dr. Chen smiled, though we do have some basic rules for visitors. Such as, don't try to conquer us, Marcus said, counting on his fingers. Don't try to destroy us, don't harm other visitors. Share your knowledge freely, help with research projects, and try the local food at least once. That's it? Kelta asked. That's it, Jessica confirmed. Everything else is negotiable, Jorix chimed thoughtfully. This is not what we expected from a first contact scenario. What did you expect? Dr. Chen asked curiously. Demands, territorial negotiations, threats, trade agreements with unfavorable terms, Vex listed. Marcus laughed. We're not conquering you, Vex. We're adopting you. Adopting us. It's a human thing, Jessica explained. When we find someone we care about, especially someone younger or more vulnerable, we take responsibility for their well-being. We help them grow, learn, become stronger. But, Dr. Chen added, good parents don't control their children. They guide them, support them, and eventually let them make their own choices. Professor Zixthor was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. So humans see yourselves as parents to younger species? Not parents exactly, Marcus said carefully. More like, older siblings maybe? We've been around a little longer, we've made some mistakes you might want to avoid, we've learned some things that might be useful. But we're still learning. Too, Jessica emphasized. There are things your species understand that we don't. Ways of thinking that are completely foreign to us. That's why we want to exchange students and researchers. To learn from each other, Dr. Chen said. That's what families do. The word families hung in the air like a promise. Kelta was the first to speak. So, when do we start? Epilogue. 6 months later, Professor Zixthor stood at the front of the same auditorium, but everything had changed. The room was packed, not just with his regular students, but with beings from a dozen different species, including 3 humans who had become permanent guest lecturers. Today, he announced to the crowd, we conclude our series on human folklore with a presentation from Dr. Chen about human educational practices. Dr. Chen stood up from the front row, her usual seat now, and walked to the podium. She'd traded her glasses for contact lenses and her hair was shorter, but she still carried herself with that peculiar human combination of confidence and humility. Thank you, Professor, she said. But before we begin, I think we should acknowledge how much we've all learned in the past 6 months. She gestured to the audience. In the front rows sat Kelta, Jorix, and Vex. But they weren't alone. Next, to Kelta sat 2 human students from New Geneva Colony, comparing notes on comparative biology. Jorix was quietly harmonizing with a human musician who was studying crystalline acoustics. Vex was deep in conversation with a human engineer about probability mathematics. When we first met, Dr. Chen continued, you thought humans were extinct monsters. We thought you were just another collection of civilized species we'd need to approach carefully. We were both wrong. She activated the holographic display, showing images from the past 6 months, humans and aliens working together in laboratories, sharing meals in cafeterias, playing strange hybrid games that combined the rules from multiple species. What we discovered, Dr. Chen said, is that intelligence and curiosity are universal languages, that the desire to learn, to grow, to understand the universe around us, exists in every sentient species we've encountered. Marcus stood up from his seat in the 3rd row. He'd been working with the Academy's security department, teaching them human defensive techniques while learning their conflict resolution methods. More importantly, he added, we learned that the things that make us different aren't weaknesses to be overcome. They're strengths to be shared. Professor Zixthor nodded. Which brings us to today's announcement. The room fell silent with anticipation. Jessica Rodriguez, who had been coordinating with Galactic diplomatic channels, joined them at the front. 6 months ago, the Human Colonial Alliance was a secret organization. Today we're proud to announce that we've been formally accepted into the Galactic Council. Cheers erupted from the audience, a strange symphony of alien sounds mixed with human voices. But that's not the biggest news, Dr. Chen said, grinning. The hologram changed to show architectural plans for a massive new structure. The Galactic Council has approved construction of the first interspecies research university, she announced. It will be built in orbit around this system, as a joint project between the Human Colonial Alliance and the Academy. Professor Zixthor's 4 eyes went wide. Here? But why here? Marcus laughed. Because this is where first contact actually worked. This is where a room full of scared aliens and 3 nervous humans figured out how to be friends. This is where human pack bonding expanded to include an entire galaxy. The university will house students and researchers from every known species, Jessica explained, sharing knowledge, solving problems together, and probably creating new forms of chaos that none of us have imagined yet. Kelta raised her claw. What kind of chaos? Dr. Chen's grin widened. Well, we've already had to establish new safety protocols. After a human student tried to pet one of the crystalline researchers, Jorix chimed in what sounded like laughter. The harmonics were actually quite pleasant. And, Marcus added, we had to redesign the cafeteria 3 times after discovering that human food is apparently toxic to half the species in the galaxy, while their food gives us digestive problems we didn't know were possible. But we're figuring it out, Jessica said. That's what families do. They work through problems together. Vex raised an appendage. Dr. Chen, what will you be teaching at the new university? Applied pack bonding, she said without hesitation. The science and art of building trust between different species. And I'll be teaching defensive cooperation, Marcus added. How to protect people without hurting anyone else. Cross-cultural communication, Jessica said. Though honestly, most of my examples will probably come from this classroom. Professor Zixthor looked around the room, at his students who were no longer just his students, at the humans who were no longer mysterious aliens, at the future that was no longer uncertain. And I, he said, will be teaching the most important course of all. What's that, Professor? Kelta asked. Zixthor smiled, an expression he'd learned from watching humans. How to be wrong about everything and still end up right. The room erupted in laughter, human laughter, crystalline chiming, Rigelian scale rattling, and sounds from a dozen other species that had no names yet, but somehow harmonized perfectly. Dr. Chen looked out at the audience, at this impossible collection of beings who had somehow become family, and realized that this was what human folklore was really about. Not the legends of individual heroes doing impossible things, but the reality of ordinary people, human and alien alike, choosing to care about each other, choosing to learn from each other, choosing to build something better together than any of them could create alone. Class dismissed, Professor Zixthor announced. But don't go too far. Tomorrow we start planning the curriculum for interspecies literature. I understand humans have some very interesting stories about something called science fiction. As the students filed out, chattering excitedly in a dozen different languages, Dr. Chen lingered at the podium. Marcus approached her. Penny, for your thoughts? Just thinking, she said, about how we were so worried about making a good first impression. And instead? Dr. Chen laughed. Instead, we accidentally started a revolution. The good kind of revolution, Jessica pointed out, joining them. Is there any other kind? Marcus asked. They stood there for a moment, looking out at the empty auditorium, where everything had changed, where 3 nervous humans and a room full of terrified aliens had somehow figured out how to become the first interspecies family in galactic history. So, Dr. Chen said finally, what do we do for our next trick? Professor Zixthor, who had been quietly organizing his notes, looked up with a grin that was becoming more human-like every day. Well, he said, I've been getting some very interesting messages from other universities Apparently there are a lot of professors out there who would like to know what human folklore really looks like. Marcus groaned. How many? About 3,000 so far. Jessica laughed. Looks like we're going to need a bigger spaceship. Or, Dr. Chen suggested, we could teach them to come to us, set up exchange programs, visiting lectures, cultural immersion experiences. Turn the whole galaxy into one big university, Zixthor mused. Now that, Marcus said, is a pack-bonding project worthy of humanity. And as they walked out of the auditorium together, human and alien, teacher and student, friends and family, none of them noticed the small recording device that Professor Zixthor had left running. Later, that recording would become the most requested educational material in galactic history, not because it documented first contact between humans and aliens, but because it captured the exact moment when the galaxy learned that the most important human folklore wasn't about what they could do. It was about who they chose to become and who they chose to bring along for the journey. The end.